Hey everybody, it's Anne Hein. I have to move my camera and get my cameraman to hold the camera for me. So hang on one second while I get that set up. And we'll turn this around, do the nice handoff. All right, am I back in the screen? Yep, okay. So I'm Anne Hein. I'm one of the national educators for Janome. And today I get to talk to you about quilting in the hoop of your embroidery machine and using the Artistic Digitizer to create a design in there. Now last week some of you heard about our great announcement where Janome is offering the Artistic Digitizer software for free for 30 days. You just have to sign up at the link, and we have a link in the comments. I'm sure they're going to put it in the comments now that I mentioned that. So the link will be in the comments, so you can sign up there. Now the United States and Canada are using that link. If you're in the UK or Australia, they have their link, so go to their websites and check that out. And if you're outside that area, then you can go to your local distributor or your local dealer and talk to them about it and work through the process that way. I've talked to a few people that have done it that way, so check it out if you want to try the software. It's really fun, and I'll show you today how you use the software. So I'm going to be quilting in the hoop, and I want to show you first about the hoops. So Janome makes a quilting hoop. It's for the 15,000 and the 12,000. It's a large hoop, 8.5 by 8.5. Comes with large magnets, so you can put all three of your layers over the quilt, the hoop, and then quilt it. And then you use the big magnets, and you have a grid here to help center it. And I'll show you how to work that in just a moment. If you have a 500E or a 550E, you have this hoop. It has the connector on the side for your machine. It's a little bit smaller hoop, but it does come with the same grid, same process as that. And it's really what Janome calls it is AccuFill quilting. And I know we have a segment coming up on live that's going to be all on AccuFill quilting, so you'll have to stop in for that. I'm just going to give you a couple highlights. The other thing, when I go to set up my machine, I like to use my blue bobbin case, and this is actually my red one at the moment. I know it's hard to see, but the bobbin cases have a little mark on them. The standard one that's in your machine is red, and then with your embroidery machine you get a high tension one that's yellow for use with embroidery, and then we also make a blue dot one for free motion quilting. It's a lesser tension on the bobbin case. So when I quilt in the hoop, I like to use my blue dot bobbin case. So that's already in. And then on the screen of the machine, we're going to turn here. On the screen of the machine, I do a couple things. I like to go into my set mode, and then I'll come in here to the embroidery set mode on there, and I'm going to turn on one stitch stop. Now one stitch stop will go to the start of my design and take one stitch and give me the opportunity to pull up my bobbin thread so I don't have threads on the bottom. And then the other thing I like to do, I'm going to page over 2 pages, maybe 3. I'm going to turn off thread cutting because at the end of my design, I don't want it to cut the threads. I'm going to show you how I pull up my bobbin thread at the end of the design. Once you make any changes in here, you want to touch OK to save your changes. And then when you're done quilting in the hoop, you want to make sure you turn those back on for the thread cutting and off for the one stitch stop, or it'll be stopping every time you make a color change. So come on over here and take a look in my hoop, and I'll show you how I set up my quilting in here. Now I did make a design. I'm going to show you how to make the template for this later on. I have it taped to my grid. As you can see here, it's taped on the grid. And I will move my fabric around and get it in position with the grid so that the start of my design and the end of my design will line up right over here. And I have a little dot, if you can kind of see that. It might be kind of hard to see here, but there it is. So that's where that is. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to use my hoop forward or hoop back button here. And I'm going to let my machine go back to the center because I want to show you one thing on the center. When you put your hoop on and you're ready to stitch, you do want to use your hand wheel and move your needle down so that it fits through the hole underneath there in the grid. That way your design and your grid are all centered. If it is not, you can use the little dials over here. Now I'm not able to look at the screen to see if anybody's giving me any little shout outs or checking in, and I don't know if my cameraman can see those, but I'm just going to say hi right now. I think Dot might be watching, or Amy, so hi to Amy, and I think Pat's out there, and I'm sure there's a few other people, but when I get on the other side, when I do the software, I will take a look and see who else is there. So I've centered my design, Now I want to remove my grid. Don't sew with the grid in here. It has happened to people, so don't sew. I'm just going to bring it out here again and remove it easily. Just like that. Set it off to the side. And then I can hit my hoop forward button. It goes back to the center. And then I want to just take one stitch to bring it over here, just to make sure I'm aligned. So when it comes over here, I can take a look, and I could turn my hand wheel if I have to and make sure it's hitting right there at the beginning of my design, and it is. So come on this way, because I'm going to let it stitch for a little bit so you can see. Here we're going to start it up. It takes that first, whoops, well that's because I played with it earlier and it didn't pull up the bobbin thread, but it's going to take its stitches and go on its way. I did a little test earlier, so that's what that happened. Let me put this back in here. There we go. All right, so while that's stitching, I'm going to keep an eye on it, but I want to show you a couple of samples too while that's going. So this is a quilt I did. It's a whole cloth quilt. It's using the AccuFill with the stipple, and I just use the same design over and over, just like I'm doing here with the template. So I quilted the whole quilt. This one over here has a little teacup on it, and if you get close, you can see my teacup. I'll move it to the back. I think you can see it a little bit better. How we doing there? Good with that? So this one I designed in the software, and then I used it on my quilt, and I was able to size it smaller for the sides and larger across the top. When you're quilting in the hoop, you can do things like this, where you have just one single design, and you can plop those wherever you want on your quilt. This is a quilt in progress, so here's another design here. So I can just put these all in different spots on my quilt throughout the whole process, just hooping and putting one in and just put them wherever I want. My design is almost done, so I'm going to put this over here. All right. Now that it's done, it didn't cut my thread. So what I want to do is I'm going to come over here on the screen of my machine, and I'm going to open up this little calculator. Now my design has 696 stitches. I want to go back to the 695th stitch, and that's where I'm going to put my number in and touch OK. And it's going to move to one stitch before the end. I can cycle my needle, and then I can pull up my bobbin thread. So there it is. So I have all my threads on the top, and I could just cut them. And now my bobbin thread is on the top, so I can, when I go to finish my quilt, I can go ahead and clean all that up and not have any thread, you know, all those little thread trims on the back. I can bury my my little threads from the top. All right, so I'm done with this one. I'm actually going to rehoop it. So let me show you how I do that. I go back up here, and I like to move my quilt off to the left. How we doing there on comments? We have a little comments. Oh, we got someone from Sweden. All right. Oh, Magnolia, Delaware. We're neighbors, just about. I'm in the north part of Wilmington, or well, north part of Delaware in Wilmington. So I'm going to take off my magnets, just like this. This is the fiddly part, so I'm just going to show you a bit of this, and then we're going to move to marking after this. So I stick my grid in there, and I'm just going to slide my quilt across. I have some pins here for basting. I'm going to take those off. They're in the way. I'm going to slide over. I did a little bit of marking. I don't know if you can see my line here. I don't always keep things very straight, so I did a little bit of a chalk line so that I can keep my grid straight as I go across. All right, so I'm almost to the far edge of that design. Let's go a little bit further. Here we go. A little bit more. There we are. All right, so I can see this is the end of my last design, and there's where my design is going to start. So I have to pull my quilt a little bit, one way, the other way, and get it all lined up where I want it. I want to make sure my grid is all the way in my hoop, not hanging up on the edge of the hoop here. So make sure it's all the way in. Once I get it in place, I take my magnets, and I like to go from the outside to in, and I'll go around and put my magnets all the way around. And then I take my grid out, and then I'll let my needle come over here, and I check to see if it's in place. If it's pretty close and I just need to move it a couple stitches. I can use my wheel here to move it just a couple stitches, and that'll align it perfectly, and I'll do my next one and keep on going across my quilt. So let me show you my marking. I'm going to take the quilt off of here. And I'm going to lay it on my table back here so you can see. And I want to grab my grid. So when I start out, I'll lay this up here like so and figure out, oh, this is where I want to start. And then I'll use the grid line here and I'll draw a line all the way across my quilt so that I can keep straight going across my quilt. Now this quilt has a nice seam that goes all the way across. I can use that for making sure I'm staying straight all the way down, because sometimes, you know, the top edge of your quilt might be crooked. So you can do that. And then to do the next one down, I figure out how much space I want to leave here. And I'll put my template here and I'll mark where I want to be and where the center of my grid is, which is right here. And then I'll draw a line for this one and I'll go all the way across. And then I'll just work my way across. I'll go down and across and work my way till I get all done with my design. Now if I get down here and I have some parts of it hanging off, I do let it stitch off like this, and that's fine. Or you can stop it and move it ahead and restart it. I also like to have plenty of fabric around the outside of my quilt so that I can get it in the hoop and have it attached nicely. If you don't have enough, you can always cut strips of fabric and add them in. So there's not a problem with that. So let me take the camera here. And do we have any questions so far? Let's see, we have a couple things going on here. I can't really see a whole lot of them. All right, well, I'm going to put the camera up on my little camera stand and show you the software and how I made that design. Here we go. All right, so everybody should be able to see my screen. Oh yeah, and I just saw in here someone asking about dealers. Some of our dealers are still open, and they are doing that curbside pickup, home delivery. You have to call in. They'll do your shopping for you and have it ready for you when you drive by. So it's really fun like that too. So we're learning new ways to do our business. All right. So when I'm in my software, I'm going to go ahead and open the design I used. It's right here in my recents. And I just want to remind people, you can set your default hoop here. So every time you open your software, you have the one hoop to work with. And I always start with my biggest hoop and then I can always move from there. And I've picked my fabric choice. And to understand the fabric choice and the embroidery category, if you go to your help files and search embroidery category, you can read about it there and it'll tell you a little bit more information. So here's the JPEG I'm going to work with. I actually just drew this myself. I'm going to show you different ways to get a design. And I'm going to shorten this up a little bit, just crop it in a little bit. I don't need all this white edge. And I'm going to bring it in as a backdrop. Instead of, I'm not going to auto digitize it. I can just bring this one in as a backdrop. I'm going to touch OK. And there it is on my screen. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to change my my hoop. I want to work with the embroidery hoop. So I'm going to go to my hoop icon there, double click on this one, scroll down and pick my quilting hoop. So there it is. I know it's a little bit outside the hoop here and here, but I will work on that. It's just a diagram I'm going to follow. The next thing I'd like to do is add a guideline. So down here are your guidelines. And when you touch your guidelines, oops, there you go, you can click on here and you can move your guideline anywhere you like. Oops, now I got two of them. Hang on a second here. I'm getting a little crazy. Let's take this one off. Come here. There we go. Let's delete this one. Let's bring this one down. All right. So my hand is shaking. So anyways, we're going to take my, there we go, and make a nice straight line. When you do a edge-to-edge design, you want to make sure your start, which is here, and your finish are on the same line. So I can move that up a little bit, put my little hand on there. Let's see. There we go. Oops. I don't know what's going on. There we go. All right, so there's my design. Next thing I want to do is touch the select button so it'll turn off that live guideline so it doesn't move around on me. And I'm going to pick out my Digitize tool over here, outline shape. And I'm just going to start here on the line, and it's going to be outside of my hoop a little bit, and I'm just going to go around my shape just like this. And I can stay right on that line if I want to, or, you know, if I'm off a little bit, that's fine. I can edit those nodes when I get all done. And I'm just going to click around. So far, not so hard. I happen to be the girl who likes to click and make it happen, so this is really fun for me. And I'm just going to go all the way around till we get to the end. Let's see here. Where else are we? Here we go. Almost to the end. And we'll just finish it up here. And I'm actually going to make this one end coming up to the line because if you see where I started, it's coming down to the line. So I'm just going to take a little license here to make it come up that way. And then I'm going to right click and shape. And there's my design. I'm going to select it and I can move it over a little bit. It should come into the hoop. It might be too big. Maybe I'll just squish it a little bit just to get it for today. There we go. Now, you can't really see it too well, so I'm gonna take the view and make my backdrop hidden. So there's my design. If I want to edit it more, I can click on my edit nodes over here on the left-hand side, and then I can work on editing all those nodes. And all you have to do is move them around like this. You can move the little arrows and you can reshape it however you like. So a little trick that I have is once I have this one done, I like to use the array tool right here to see what it would look like as a whole quilt. So let me show you that. First, I want to turn off my grid, so I don't need that. And I'm going to turn off my hoop, so I don't need that. And I'm also going to turn off my, well, I'll leave my guideline for now. Just turn that off. Let's see here. There we go. And I'm going to go to rectangular array. Oops, there we go. So when you go into a rectangular array, you can set how many copies you want horizontally and vertically. And so here's my design. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to scroll in really close because what I want to do is make sure that first design fits to all the other designs. So right here, they're connecting. So, well, they're not really connecting. I'll sew from here to here, and then I'll align and do the next one. And then I can also, when it's there, I can also move these up to see what my spacing would be and what kind of spacing I like. And if I wanted to, there's a measure tool over here. I could measure this distance so I know. So I'm going to say apply so we can see this like that. And I'll move it off that pink part so you can see that too. Here you go. So that's what your quilt would look like when you get done. Let me make it a little darker because that is a little light. Let me see if we can go to a nice darker color. There we go. There we are. So now you have a better idea of what your quilt's going to look like when it's all done. Isn't that pretty cool? I think that's really cool. All right. So let me show you another way to do it. I don't know, are people still out there? Let's see, we have someone from Northern, oh, somebody from Ontario. All right. Let's see what else we have. A few more people here and there. Hi, Seal. Could I go over the technique for cutting the thread again, or perhaps do a brief video at another time? Okay. At the end of my quilting, what I did was I used the little calculator tool there, and when I touched that, I was able to put in the number of the stitch just before my last stitch. And then my machine went there, and then I used my needle up, needle down to cycle through and pick that up. Hopefully that'll help. We can review it again on another video too. Now another design that I did was this one here. And I brought in a graphic as a background, and then I did the same thing. I used my Digitize outline shape, and I just went around here like this and made my shape. Just like this, doing a lot of clicking. Remember, I can always edit afterwards. And then I came out here and did a bunch of loops like that and so forth. And when I got all done, I ended the shape. And I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to delete this one over here because it's just going to be in the way. This is what happened at the end. I took a little artistic license and did a little loops here, made a leaf, and came over to that other flower. So this is another edge-to-edge design that I could use when quilting. Okay, now I'm going to show you one more. You can take a piece of clip art or, a piece of clip art. Let me get a new page. And if you go to Tools and you go to Clip Art Library, there's all these clip arts that are already in here. And there's a lot of them. And I use this butterfly right here, the red one. So I'm going to click it. And when you use, these ones here, they have little arrows on which way you're to drag them when you apply them to your piece. So I'm going to go down here and go Insert, and I'm going to click and drag. Oops, I must have picked the wrong one. Let's delete that one. I always have to have at least one little oopsie in here going. Okay, let's go back to Clip Art, and I'm going to put butterfly in here. Here we go. This one. And Insert, and then I click and drag. There's my butterfly. It actually is satin stitch, so I don't really want that on my quilt, but if I select it, I can right click, convert fill to center line, and then in my properties, I can come over here. I'm in outline now. I can turn it into a running stitch, and there I have a nice little butterfly that I could quilt on my quilt. One thing I didn't mention, I'm going to go back to my first one. This is the first one I did, the one I stitched for all of you. When you have this design, you have control of your stitch length over here on the side. So if you like to stitch with a certain stitch length, maybe you like 2.2 mil, in our machine, it's usually in millimeters, so it's 2.2. What you can do is, I have mine set for inches. I don't have to go look it up. If I want to know what that is, I can just put in 2.2 mm, hit enter, and it sets it at the equivalent in inches for my stitch length. So you can change your stitch length right over here in your properties. So the last thing I'm going to show is how to print your template. So you would come up here to print, and here would be your template. You can actually do design only, which will take away some of the extra stuff that's all around there, and you want to put in your start point. Then you can print this out and tape it together, and you'll have your printout. I always like to double check though that this is the size. Sometimes when you do design only, it makes it smaller. So if we go back out of here and come back in, you may have to print all 4 of them so that you get the proper size for your design. Now, one last thing, I did say that was the last thing. When you're working with a design, you can come over here to File and Design Properties, and you can actually put some information in about your design. And when you do that printout, this information will show up on that design. So I think that's on the printout. So there we go. So that's all I have for you today. I don't know if there's any more questions. I'm going to go back through again and see if we had any questions. It's been pretty quiet. Yes, that hoop's available for the 14,000. And Juliana's in her car, watching from her car. Oh, Pat, what feature have you never used? Is that the array tool or something else? Let me see what else in here. Oh, the calculator. People like the calculator. All right. Well, I'm going to let everybody go for today. Remember, your dealers are still out there. Give them a shout out and say hello. It's been great talking to everybody and doing our videos. We'll have somebody back here tomorrow again at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so check that out. And we will see you then. Bye-bye for now.